All right, folks, how you doing? Welcome back. So, a channel that I used to follow years ago was Chronicles of Judah 144, and I still revisit him every once in a while. He just kind of popped into my head the other day, and I remember watching these excellent videos that he made about ET, and he kind of analyzes it and dissects it and talks about the many faces of Pan. And I think this is also relevant when you go into the CanAm missing project and the missing 411 as well. It might actually explain a thing or two. Now, I don't want to go into these videos. You can check them out on YouTube. Just type in ET, the many faces of Pan. And it's written into his channel description that he will take action, copyright action, if you take from his videos and try to use them as your own. So I don't know whether I could comment directly on his videos or not, but I'm going to respect his privacy and choose not to do so. I'll just say that these are excellent videos if you get the chance to watch them, though some of the stuff he talks about is pretty heavy. You really need to be in the right mind frame for it. It's not lighthearted stuff. It's pretty serious stuff and pretty dark. But it also reminded me of Ed and Lorraine Warren, their channel on YouTube. So I'm going to go into that. Now, the thumbnail particularly here reminded me of an idol which is kept in the museum run by the Warrens when they were alive, which has since passed on to the ownership of Tony Spera, I think is his name, Ed and Lorraine's son-in-law. So I'm going to go into that. Now, I'm not even going to talk very much throughout this. I'm just going to let Tony Spera explain what this thing is and why it is so dangerous.
Which at one point in the future, I'll do an entire video of all the items in the occult museum. But today I want to focus on one.
Definitely check out the Ed and Lorraine Warren channel on YouTube. And to get this video, you just type in Ed and Lorraine Warren Satanic Idol.
Item, and here it is. The Satanic Idol found in Sandy Hook. This idol was found in the woods of Sandy Hook, Connecticut, back in 1991, by a young deer hunter who was about 22 years old, and he was hunting in the woods with a bow and arrow, looking for deer. Now, I don't advocate doing that. Ed didn't hunt. I don't hunt. And my father didn't hunt. My father was in World War II. And Ed was in World War II, and they never hunted. They didn't like to kill things unnecessarily. And neither do I. And I'm not going to judge anybody for that. But anyway, he's out in the woods with his bow and arrow trying to find deer. And he gets out of his car on the road. He walks into the woods. And pretty soon he found himself lost. He did not know where he was. And as he's walking along a pathway, he stumbles upon this horrific looking object. If you look at it, it's ugly. It's about 6 feet 2, 6 feet 3 inches tall. What is it made out of? I'm not sure for positively, but I believe it's a ceramic type. I did touch it at one time, which Ed admonished me for. It's kind of not paper mache, but more like a porcelain, like a china. And if this thing tipped over and fell, it would fall into a million pieces. But back to the story. He stumbles upon this on a grotto of rocks, on a round grotto of rocks, and this is set atop of it. The young deer hunter immediately knew something was amiss. He said to himself, "This isn't right, this ugly item in the woods." He sat there for a moment, stunned, scared. He said all he could think of is getting the heck out of there. What did he do? He stood up, walked away fast, very fast.
Yeah, never ignore your instincts, particularly when you're in the woods and you're coming across freaky looking idols to Pan.
Fast. And as he's walking down this pathway in the summer, 91, maybe 1991, not knowing where he was going, not knowing where his car was, but his heart was pounding. All of a sudden, out of nowhere,
God gives you these instincts for a good reason. They are your radar.
Ladies and gentlemen, he is encountered by an older man, about 70 years old, wearing completely black outfit from head to toe. And he had snow white hair and snow white beard, shortly cropped, walking step for step with this young man. And when I say step for step, I mean almost like a military march, step for step.
It sounds like he was escorting him away from the idol, like escorting him out.
And the funny part this young man relayed to us was that the elderly man did not even look over at him, just kept walking step for step on his right side. And he said to himself, I'm very scared. I got to do something. And he said for a moment, he felt like pulling a quiver, an arrow out of his quiver and stabbing this guy in the heart because he was so frightened. But he didn't do that. Instead, he just was able to get the courage up to say to the man, how do I get out of here? He said the man never spoke, never even looked over at him, just pointed his finger to the right. And after he did that, he just walked away slowly, away from this young man. And the young man now is really frightened. His heart's really pounding, saying this guy was really creepy. Gets to his car, finds it, goes home, tells his buddies. His buddies immediately say, well, why don't you call Ed Warren? He lives right in Monroe, next town over, 2 towns over.
This is really why people like Ed Warren are so necessary and so rare in the world. You know, you really need people like an Ed Warren and a Tony Sparrow, come to that. And also Lorraine Warren as well, naturally.
And so he did. And Ed and Lorraine did go out after speaking to the young man on the phone, and he met this young man on the roadway. The young man said he thought he could find his way back, and he did. And as soon as Ed saw this ugly statue out in the woods, he knew what it was. And he said to the young man, after the young man described that white-haired man, said to the young man, he said, I know exactly who that guy is. I know exactly what this is. That young man, that man was a satanic priest in a satanic cult. And this is a satanic worship idol. And then Ed looked and said, and he was with Lorraine, he said, I'm taking this back to the museum. It doesn't belong in the woods. And he did. He loaded it in his car, drove it back to the Warren's Occult Museum here, where it still stands, of course, today, has not been moved. I'll go around a little bit here so you can see a little bit better the close-up of it.
The question I'd imagine a lot of people would be asking watching this, and I kind of thought about that myself, why didn't they just destroy the idol? Well, the conclusion I came to was that the idol probably contains some sort of demonic spirit within it, and if you smashed it, you would release that spirit. That's probably why Ed didn't want Tony touching it, and admonished him when he did, even if he touched it accidentally.
Oh, the eyes staring there, straight ahead there. Okay.
There's no doubt, having watched Chronicles of Judah 144's 2 videos on ET, that this is Pan. This is absolutely Pan. Very evil. Very evil. Stay out of the woods, people. I'm not kidding.
Okay. Trying to get a good shot of it for you guys. And it goes down to the floor where there's a base right there. It's all made out of like some kind of a ceramic. Pretty heavy too, though. Anyway, he gets it back to the museum. There's no problem. Ed says to me later, no, everything was fine. And then what happened was this. About 3 days after Ed put this in the museum, he was out in the driveway changing the wipers on his cars in the summer. Lorraine was about 25, 30 feet down the driveway watering some flowers. And Ed turns and sees Lorraine, and Lorraine waves at him. That was how Lorraine was. She would wave immediately and say, hi, hon. You know, and he'd say, hey, we're going to go to lunch after I fix these wipers. She says, okay. And he goes back to doing the wipers. Just coincidentally, he just happened to look back again. He's just looked back towards Lorraine. She's no longer there where she was watering the flowers. Now she's, as he said, about 25, 30 feet farther down the driveway, on the ground in a fetal position, semi-conscious. Ed drops what he's doing. He runs to Lorraine. He's screaming at her, what's the matter, Lorraine? What happened? And he's shaking her, and she's not waking up. He calls an ambulance, and they brought her to St. Vincent's Hospital in Bridgeport, Connecticut. For 3 days, she was in the hospital, in and out of consciousness. I did go visit her with my wife, Judy, on the next day, the next morning, and she was really out of it. It's like someone hit her in the head, and she had the flu at the same time. She was just semi-conscious. The doctors did lots and lots of tests.
And I bet those tests found nothing. By the way, if you question the existence of God and the devil and the supernatural realm, watch the Ed and Lorraine Warren channel. Watch videos like this. They're even missing 411, missing CanAm. I think this decisively proves that the spiritual realm absolutely does exist, and there's a lot out there that we do not understand.
And on the third day,
but I always remind myself, if the dark side is real, so is the light.
Amazingly, she just snapped right out of it. She wasn't in any more danger, and she was very coherent, and they released her from the hospital. And later on, I think it was about 2 or 3 days even after she got home, I visited Ed. We walked into the museum, and we looked at this object again, this idol. And I said to Ed, Ed, what did the doctors finally decide was wrong with Lorraine?
Yeah, I bet the answer is nothing. They found nothing.
And he looked at me and he says, the doctors never, ever told me what was wrong with my wife.
Because they don't know.
He said, but they didn't have to tell me. I know what was wrong. And I said, what do you mean you know what was wrong, Ed? He said, I know what was wrong. It was that guy, that high priest and that satanic cult that did it. And then he told me the man's name. And he said to me, I hate to even say his name. I'm just going to tell you his name once and I'll never say it again.
Well, it's like David Icke often says, always says, energy goes where attention flows. That's a spiritual law.
Because every time I say his name, something bad happens. And I guess this priest was pretty powerful, according to Ed. Ed told me that this man, this high priest, did this to Lorraine as a warning to Ed Warren. He knew that Ed was very knowledgeable in the rites of reverse ceremonial magic. He knew Ed could handle him. But as a warning, though, to Ed, he did that to Lorraine.
That might have been another reason why Ed and Tony Sparrow didn't destroy that idol, because the repercussions would have been even more severe.
And that is the story, ladies and gentlemen, of this ugly, creepy idol that's in this museum that we don't like to ever really touch. We don't like to give it much recognition, except, of course, I'm giving it some recognition today as an educational tool to you guys out there, and as the official Warren's channel, to let you in on some of these objects up close and personal, So for that, I'm going to end this video now, and we'll see you again.
Just remember, God exists, the devil exists, and evil absolutely exists. We'll see you the next time.